This is the superstructure part B. It's a unified field theory. And we left off on part A with the geometry that's built into this crystal. I was alluding to how the crystal is shown here was illustrating how a template is formed and a blueprint of memory goes into the star group. Well, what I mean by memory in the geometry sense, in the reality of the 3D sense, where crystal actually synchronizes the position of the Earth in its galactic positioning, in the formation of the galaxy. It synchronizes the positioning of the Earth. And what I was alluding to was that this is how memory is stored in the biological sense, which I'm going to get to. But going over back to the biological, I'm going to touch on the movie The Rain Man and how that was what that was derived from. It was actually let's get back to the superstructure so we can get an idea of where those 37s relate to the 60-degree arc of the equilateral triangle. So from the movie the Rain Man, they used they just replaced matchsticks with toothpicks and whatnot. But in actuality, what happened was the two savant twins called out 37, 37, 37 equals 111 at the settling of a 111 matchbook freefall onto the ground. And from that, these two girls have very low IQ. I don't think the two of them amount to more than 95. They did not count. The capacity is not there for them to make that count in real time. So what I'm saying is that by calling out those three numbers and totaling the matchstick to 111, which it was a correct sum. What was going on subconsciously within the savant's thinking was the superstructure. The superstructure was formed. In other words, what they saw was this. The triangle with the 337s totaling the 111 degree circumference of a circle. So what I'm saying is that as 37 relates to 60, to the 120 rather, the 260s. So as 37 relates to the 260s, the 111 relates to the 360. So in a 111 degree in a 111 degree circumference, the 337s will form that linear model into a cyclical. So the conversion from linear to cyclical is critical in the transformation of the inversion from one-dimensional to three-dimensional, because it's that three-dimensional that makes the changes the cyclical into spherical. And spherical is where we live. This is our reality. What we can, how to play that in reverse is simple. We take in angles and edges of objects, of what our sensory input tells us, asserts to be real. So what we do so what's happening inside between the eye and the optic nerve is that these lineal patterns of angles and edges are being transformed from a 3D sense back into a 1D sense via a 2D inverter. So the 3D constitutes our reality, and this is how the savant girls arrived at that figure subconsciously through the unified superstructure. They use that field, not even being aware of it themselves. And to to project a little further out in this on this plane, I'm going to go to Daniel Tamek's Embracing the Big Sky. That's the name of the book. I hope we get some sales from this because he's an incredibly intelligent person. I'm going to open it up, and this is Daniel's description of how the Savant twins were able to reach the 111. You can see the 111 screens it's on the right side of the screen. You can see 111 matchsticks. He tends to describe what went on with no real conclusion, but the conclusion I draw from this is going further down and further down and further down. We can bring this down to the page number where we can see right there, the superstructure. Going past page 137 on to page 143 is another demonstration of another savant who, by finding a prime, actually, this is finding a prime, he was asked if, Howard was asked to find a prime number between, 10,500 and 10,600, and so, let's first go back to page 143. Okay, page 143, I'm going to read this to you because it's very hard to get it on the screen. Page 143 talks about 42 is factored as 2 times 3 times 7, how 2,253 is reached using a combination of 13 times 13, totaling 169, times 37. There's a very strong presence of the superstructure in this formulation or tabulation, as the numbers are the superstructure numbers are all in place. The 3 ones, as in 1100, 11,100. I can go on and on here. These numbers really do something for me. But the 213s, the association of the 37. This is why I think Daniel picked this figure subconsciously in his book, Embracing the White Sky. Savants are incredibly intelligent people. I don't think they realize what they're using to arrive at, to help them along. But going back to the superstructure, and from the biological standpoint, the superstructure is within all of us because it is all of us. We are the superstructure, and the superstructure is pre-Big Bang material. It's a unified field of nature, and basically, from what we are, our reality is, what we assert to be real from in our reality is because we see this reality through a prism. This divides white light. This is where we live, in that tiny little spectrum on the tiny little white light spectrum on the electromagnetic field, on the electromagnetic spectrum. This is what constitutes our reality. What it is beyond this, descriptively, is very hard to illustrate or even convey because of the superstructure. the superstructure works perfectly every time. It There's no such thing as a mistake. There's no error. There's everything is perfect and in its own beauty. And going deeper, going deeper with the superstructure, we have well, get a little organized here. I'm going to bring this as close as I can. We have this is a proton. This is inside the nucleus of an atom. This is a proton, and alongside it we have a neutron, which in their own sense, in their own realm, do exchange positions. But what I'm showing here in two dimension is actually this would be a cross section. What we're seeing here in two dimension does play out in three dimension, but this is what they constructed of is a proton has two up quarks and one down quark. Now, what is a quark? Let's not even go there because this is like cutting edge stuff, and it keeps changing every time they look at it. The stories change, and the more money flows into it. As the money flows, the story changes. So as with the superstructure installed, we can get the superstructure in here because at one point in light speed, there will be a configuration of this is the actual configuration that they give on the computer of the up down quark arrangement in the neutron and the proton. And what I'm illustrating here is when superstructure is configured in between. Let's see if I can do this with my finger. Get the proton side. If we get the down quark to be inverted from the triangle, what appears to be the triangle, that formation between the up and down quarks, and the dotted lines which configure the superstructure. Okay, there's the X right there. There's the inversion. That gives that gives the geometry for that down quark to reposition as an up quark along that plane. See this plane? Oops. Well, I can't get my finger to do that. Anyway, there's a diagonal plane there between the up and down quark, which is part of the superstructure. You can even say that it's the diameter or a cross section of a larger circle, where the up and down quark is free to play in that triangle. And so that's one point about quarks I wanted to go at the micro, and then getting back to the biological sense of the superstructure. Let's put this away for now. That we have basically made that point. The superstructure is actually better explained from this one. I brought my dog to the vet. This was a few weeks back. This is about a month back. And I was explaining to the doctor how the superstructure, the basic configuration of the superstructure. Now, what we did was I took the position of either one of these, any one of these 37s, and the doctor and her assistant actually took the formation of the other two 37s as I was explaining, and we formed a human triangle. And as I was explaining, the weirdest thing happened. As the pattern was formed on the floor, which is what I explained, that's what was being done. We were forming a pattern on the floor. We were also forming a pillar system built into the floor model, making it a 3D. So what we had was a 2D, 3D converter. And from that, I had to fight back a strong, a very overwhelming episode of deja vu, which really brought it to an abrupt end. But that's the point I'm making, is that time was distorted. There was a distortion of time, meaning that time from perspective exists only in reality, does not exist on the inversion side of the inverted opposite, and the inverse opposite actually. So I won't know any more about this, but I wouldn't recommend trying this, but it does simulate. It's a good simulator, and so getting back to the 2D, 3D converter, we have a little model of a biological, from a biological standpoint of what the superstructure is capable of doing. So it is I believe it is a unified field, and and it is because of our reality and what compensating mechanisms that the brain has, that we've developed, that we've evolved to utilize in our own brain, that doesn't allow us to concentrate on what makes us think. What evolution offers us is survival mechanism, defense mechanism, hunger, all kinds of mechanisms to advance, not to look back and see how we work. So this is where we are right now, and it's because this can divide white light, it does create our reality. Um, In review, we have the 137 prime, which carries, escorts is a better word, the angles back and forth through the inversion process. So the inverse of the prime 317 rather is the composite 713, which carries this angle formation back and forth through the process. Now, getting back to the projection, the crystal projection onto a lock. It forms a lock. Putting the crystal nosed into a mirror creates 7 points. It's a six-sided crystal with the point is 7 points. We're using the Orion constellation here for just for the geometry of it, because it's a simple way to explain the fundamentals. And what happens within the crystal, we have, going back, we have the superstructure right here. Looking close, we have the superstructure built into it. Remember, we had the electricity forming from it. And from that, you can back up a little bit, take the same or similar crystal, and simulating the mirror as the inversion apparatus, we see that the crystal can project onto that particular star group, the Orion star group, forming that template. Now, when that blueprint is formed, we have a 3D volume recreated from one dimension. From one dimensional, we use the 2D inverter, just as we see here in the crystal, to get back into the 3D. The 3D is a swelling capability of dark matter. This is what I feel, this is what I think dark matter is all about. It's not nothing, it's there for blueprints. Once this blueprint is encoded by the prime numbers, that will always form that lock. This is why, here's a good example, why when, say someone has passed away in a house that was locked on to a certain star group by the address or the telephone number, and the person that passed in the house, well, not the person, but as time goes by, real estate people will bring people into the house, and the house may suddenly get cold. This would allow for some explanation of a 3D blueprint, bringing that realm of the 2D universe back into the 3D. That would be an inversion, that that extreme temperature drop. And beyond that, I'm not going to touch too much on the paranormal with the superstructure, but it is factored in there. And as long as that number the address will never change, especially if it's a superstructure address, because my telephone number is 5313171, and I was handed that number. Nobody dreamed it up. It was involved in another incident where the superstructure more or less proved to be present. It showed the presence of the superstructure. But as long as that address and the telephone number remain the same, that's the encoding. That's the numbers that encode that memory into the two-dimensional universe, into the eggshell. And once that blueprint is swollen, it will form that swell only by a template of a projection. And then once that blueprint is formed, it's locked on until the numbers change or something interferes with that number inverting. The number system does the inverting. Going back to our house, this is where we live. This is the prison, and I can't stress enough how much this prism is a part of this triangle with 60-degree arcs, 37 degrees, 37 prime number, totaling 111, and is also part of the superstructure. So this is the end of part B. This is give us something to think about till proof comes from my final theory to make this come full circle. And that'll be the end of that. Thank you for listening.